Welcome to the final installment of a two-part webinar series designed to demonstrate physical education in recess as a platform for classroom learning. We're really happy to be with you this morning. One of the things that we have been doing this morning is trying to get all of our presenters tied together. Because of the ice and bad weather up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that dips all the way down into Austin, all of us have had to literally come on from our homes, and so we have pets and everything else we're trying to deal with. So if you hear cats meowing and dogs barking and birds doing their thing, you'll know that we've kind of improvised to bring you this webinar today. This webinar is actually a partnership between the Texas Department of State Health Services School Health Program and the Texas Association of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. And we are thrilled that we are partnering to bring what we feel is a very important issue to you, the audience. My name is Anita Wheeler. I am the School Health Coordinator with the Department of State Health Services, and I would like to thank the Texas Association of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance for allowing us to partner in collaborating with this project. We certainly want to invite you to ask questions during the webinar. We feel like that the folks that we've brought on board certainly have a lot of information to share with you, and we certainly want to invite questions, and we'll tell you how to do that here just now. This is the housekeeping on how to work with the webinar. Right now, all of you are muted so that there's not a lot of background noise. As time goes on, if you will put questions in the question box, we can then address those questions towards the end of the webinar. As I said before, you've either phoned in using your mic and speakers or you've phoned in using a telephone. We're all currently muted except for those who are speaking, and this right below is the question box that you will put your questions in, and towards the end of the webinar we will begin to answer those questions with our presenters today. And here is the toll-free number. If you start having technical problems, they will provide technical support to get you what you need in order to participate in the webinar today. I would like to introduce Diana Everett, who is the Executive Director with the Texas Association of Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. She has partnered with us in the past, and we are really excited that we are able to bring this to you today. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Diana Everett.
Thanks, Anita. TAPERD is very excited to be partnering with DSHS to present these webinars. I'd like to say a little bit about TAPERD. We are a nonprofit professional association of individuals in the allied fields of health education, physical education, recreation, and dance. We are composed of over 3,500 individual teachers and administrators serving students from kindergarten through college. TAPERD was founded in 1923 with the mission of improving the quality of instruction and advocating for health, physical education, recreation, and dance. We are the only association in Texas serving all four of these disciplines. And it is my distinct honor this morning to introduce the 2015 TAPERD President and lead presenter of today's webinar, Dr. Debbie Ray. Debbie is full professor at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. We're very glad to have her this morning and all the others that are in that DFW area because of the ice and snow. Debbie's taught physical education and coached in public schools for 12 years prior to earning her doctorate in pedagogy and sport exercise psychology. Since coming to TCU in 1999, she has served in various roles and has most recently become the Associate Dean of Health Sciences and Research in Harris College of Nursing and Health Sciences at TCU. She has published over 40 peer-reviewed articles and 14 books on physical activity, eating disorders, and adolescence. Her primary emphasis is on diversity, behavior change, and motivation. She has presented at over 250 local, regional, national, and international conferences. She has been an invited speaker on behavior change, motivation, and eating disorders, and she develops and trains physical education teachers at in-service training on developmentally appropriate curriculum which spans across the United States. Without further ado, join me in welcoming Dr. Debbie Ray.
Thank you so much. appreciate the opportunity to be on here today. All right. Sorry about that. All right. As president of TAPERD, I want to thank the Texas Department of State Health Services for their collaboration efforts with TAPERD to offer this webinar series for administrators and educators who are interested in creating a more successful platform for learning. If you missed the last webinar on February 4th, I want to take a minute to bring you up to speed about that session and then identify the purpose of today's webinar and introduce our 4 awesome speakers who will give us their perspective on implementing multiple recesses and PE into the school day. We know that in education, the world today, the classroom has moved towards a very structured, sedentary environment that stirs up boredom, lack of focus, behavioral issues, and eventually disinterest in learning. It's not that teachers necessarily want this type of environment, but the focus on testing and producing certain outcomes has driven our schools and teachers to this type of classroom. On the other hand, if you can see the picture on the right, you can imagine that students have a different classroom to explore like this. It might be that as adults we see children playing on a tree, but if you really think about it, I would argue that children don't necessarily think they are playing on a tree. This is an outdoor classroom where the children are able to explore and create in many different ways and learn many different things through play. As you can see, the very structured classroom could actually lead us to think more inside a box, more robotic in types of thoughts that we have. On the other hand, to where we are in the second topic of this seminar or webinar series. The purpose of today is to help you understand how we can take what everyone talks about, that we know kids need to move more, and shows you how some schools and school districts are moving toward that in today's times. The questions that we're going to be talking about today are how are school administrators making these changes in their schedules? What are the impacts to curriculum content? How are the pitfalls or concerns addressed when implementing this type of change? And there will be a couple of other things that will be addressed from a superintendent's perspective and from Dr. Pazzi Sahlberg's perspective. I am so excited about the speakers we have with us today. They are all great leaders with the ability to think outside the box and want children to thrive in their environment, even if it means doing something that might feel a little uncomfortable at first. As you can see here, we have 4 speakers. This is Sandy McNutt from Trinity Valley School, Dr. Jim Chadwell from Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, Ramey Ramsey from Irving ISD, and Dr. Pazzi Sahlberg, who is at Harvard University. I want to go ahead and introduce each one to you now, and then as we move through the presentation, we will move from one speaker to the next with me just basically introducing them again with a short intro and then moving on. The first of our speakers is Sandy McNutt, who is head of the lower school at Trinity Valley School. She received her BS in elementary education from Portland State, her MED in reading from Texas Wesleyan, and her administrative certification for public schools from University of North Texas. She taught in Arlington ISD for 10 years in grades 1st, 2nd, and 4th. At that position, she earned the distinction of Teacher of the Year. Then she moved into administration as a principal in Arlington ISD for the next 10 years through 2008. At that position, she also earned the distinction of ATPE Administrator of the Year. Since 2008, she has been head of the lower school at Trinity Valley School in Fort Worth. She's been working with me over the last 3 years as we've implemented the LINK project in the grades K through 2 at Trinity Valley School, and will continue to roll out another grade level each year. She will bring a unique perspective of already seeing how parents, teachers, administrators, and children respond to multiple recesses and a character development curriculum taught every week. Next, we have Dr. Jim Chadwell, Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD Superintendent. Dr. Chadwell earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, a Master's in School Administration, and a Doctorate in Educational Leadership from Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. He was a teacher, coach, high school principal, and executive director for elementary and secondary instruction in Northwest ISD prior to coming to Eagle Mountain. He taught advanced placement psychology, sociology, and German. His teaching experiences also include an internship in Hamburg, Germany, and a Fulbright scholarship in Germany as well. As a high school principal, he received the following honors: High School Principal of the Year by the Texas Association of Association Administrator of the Year, and his Career and Technology Association of Texas Area 2 Administrator of the Year. He served as Deputy Superintendent for Grapevine Colleyville ISD prior to coming to Eagle Mountain, and then he joined Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD as Superintendent of December 2010. Dr. Chadwell and I worked together for the last 3 years as well. As of this spring, we are moving to implement the LINK project into one of the Eagle Mountain schools, Eagle Mountain Elementary, which will launch the full intervention this fall. He will bring his unique perspective, being that he has learned from other cultures as well, and is the superintendent of a very well-respected school district. Third, we will have Ramey Ramsey from Irving ISD. She has a BS degree in education and a Master's of Education degree with administrative certification. She has experience teaching in both the elementary and secondary levels of public schools. She's been in the school environment for 15 years, with the last 11 years being in Irving ISD. This is her 7th year as an administrator, all in Irving ISD. She's the principal of Otis Brown Elementary School in Irving and has been with this campus the last 3 years. I just began working with her this year, but I love what she brings to the school, the children, and now bringing the LINK project to her school. She will bring a principal's perspective of how to create the schedule needed for the additional recesses, as well as the teacher-student issues that might come up. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Pasi Sahlberg. He is a Finnish educator, author, and scholar. He's worked as a school teacher, teacher educator, researcher, and policy advisor in Finland, and has studied education systems and reforms around the world. His expertise includes school improvement, international education issues, classroom teaching and learning, and school leadership. His bestseller book, Finnish Lessons, What Can the World Learn from Educational Change in Finland, from the Teachers College Press in 2011, won the 2013 Grawemeyer Award. He is the former Director General of CIMO, which is the Center for International Mobility and Cooperation in Helsinki, and currently a visiting professor of practice at Harvard University's Graduate School of Education in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He will bring a very unique perspective to the webinar today, in that he is not teaching or running public schools in Texas, but he can tell you a lot about the importance of play and why it is needed in the schools from his experiences across the globe. He and I have known each other 3 years as well. We have become very good friends, and I have to tell you, he's been such an inspiration to me in my path here in Texas through his insight and vision for our children. He will also bring a perspective a little bit different in the questioning than some of the others, because he'll talk about why play is impactful in children's lives and why it's important to bring these recesses into the public schools. So without further ado, I'm going to send the mic over to Sandy McNutt from Trinity Valley School.
Thank you, guys. Like Debbie said, it's kind of a strange day here in North Texas with snow and being at home, and I have dog treats here by my dogs in case they start barking, so just bear with us if that's the case. But so glad to be able to be a part of the panel. I bring a pretty unique perspective in that I have worked in both private schools and independent schools, and will tell you that there are huge blessings and great things about both of them. So I'll just give you a little bit of information about where I am now and what we've been doing. As Debbie said, I'm at Trinity Valley School in Southwest Fort Worth, and this we have completed 2 years, I believe going on our 3rd year of being involved in the LINK program. And when Debbie first brought the concept to us at Trinity Valley, I will have to say it was with a little bit of trepidation that we started out. And Debbie, I think you can go ahead and go to the first slide. The next slide.
Yeah, I'm trying to, and let's see, I don't know why it's not.
If not, don't worry about it. I'll try and be pretty.
No, we'll get it going. Go ahead. Okay, we're good.
Okay. But a little bit of trepidation, and I might even say a lot of trepidation when Debbie first came and talked to us about having our day consist of intervals of having 4 recesses built into our already real full days. And at that point in time, we had, I guess I would say, a pretty traditional schedule, in that we had all of our students went out for about 20 minutes one time a day for recess. So when we were looking at the prospect of changing the plan and going out 4 times a day, the things that went through my head as an administrator, first off, are we going to have parent buy-in? If we tell our parents that we're going to be extending our unstructured play outside from 1 time a day to 4, what would they be thinking? Are they thinking, what curriculum are we cutting out on? Are we still getting, the biggest bang for our buck? Do our kids need to go outside that much time and play? And then it was the same thing that my concern with teacher buy-in, because our teachers are very passionate in what they teach and how much they teach and the content and the curriculum. Just looking at the option, we knew that it was going to need to take away something, but how that was going to look was something we were kind of concerned. Because we looked at less curriculum and more play, and at first that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Even though all of us understood that, children can only sit still for a period of time. They can only take in so much information at a time. But stepping outside of that thought was a little bit scary for us. So we thought, was it possible to add multiple recesses and still get in the entire curriculum? So Debbie, if you want to go on to the next screen, because what we were thinking is, what are we going to have to give up to get in the recesses and our curriculum? So we had to really spend some time thinking about it, and like I said earlier, we had to get teacher buy-in, because without teacher buy-in, we knew that it wasn't going to work. And I think Debbie knew when she came to our school that we had teachers, even though they've been teaching for a long time. We have some kindergarten teachers that have been teaching for 40 years. But in talking with us and hearing who we are, I think she knew that we were not just willing to take a look at it, but very, very excited about looking at that opportunity. But what it took really listening to our teachers, talking to them about the plan. We needed to make sure and present the research instead of just saying we think this is the right thing to do. Debbie brought to us some very hard research that showed some significant changes in students that were studied in Finland. And it was great enough in the fact with that we thought we've got to take a look at it. And I think as a principal, what I was really looking at is, over time I see anxious kiddos, and I see kids that, come into class with, whether it be anger or anxiousness or frustration, lots of wiggles, lots of being unfocused, that in looking at this, we thought maybe this is what will make the difference. So we really looked hard at the research. And then we looked at our curriculum both horizontally and vertically. We sat down and we spent time looking very, very carefully at any overlap that we have. What are we doing in kindergarten that we actually do also in first grade? Or what do we do in first that we might have already taught in, maybe we need to make sure that, before we just really took some time looking at it horizontally and vertically. And with that, there are some things in the curriculum that teachers love to teach. If you're in elementary, you know that there's not a teacher that doesn't love teaching about dinosaurs. But how many times are we going to teach about dinosaurs? Or we had teachers that, they were just very, very tied into their curriculum. Debbie helped us look at this, which, it shouldn't have been profound, but it really was. We looked at what was developmentally age appropriate for our kids, because I know, for example, when we were looking at what could we take out of our curriculum or what could we change, we started looking at how come our kindergartners don't really understand the value of money. We work on it. Well, what we kind of figured out is developmentally, they could identify coins, and they could tell you how much a coin was worth, but the actual value, they didn't really understand that until they got into first grade. So we were putting some curriculum in kindergarten that really was easy for us to move to first grade, where they were actually more successful, and it didn't take as much time for us to teach that curriculum. And one of the big things that we did is we shored up our transition time. This was very, very eye-opening to us. How much time does it take us to line up to go to recess? How much time was it taking us to go down the hallway to go to lunch? How much time was it taking us to put on our coats or our gloves before we went out? And what was eye-opening is that when we started really working on transition time, that shoring that up gave us back at least one period of time for a recess. Easy. Did we cut off 15 minutes in the transition? And that was really eye-opening to us. And then if you go on to the next screen, the impacts to our curriculum. And I'll tell you, this is still a work in progress. We're still working on this. We don't have it down yet. But the great thing is now we're having conversations about it. Where before I think that we just, we didn't look at it as carefully as we are now. We're looking to see, what things do we not need to teach at such a young age, or what things are we spending too much time on? How can we even shore up our transition time a little bit more? It's funny when we do transition time, when you go out for their first recess, for example, for 15 minutes, the teacher was having the kids line up and let's get in a straight line, and before we go outside, all our voices are off. Well, what she ended up saying, or he ended up saying, is as long as it takes us to line up is how much time we have to take off of our break. Well, it was funny that we went from it taking 4 minutes to lining up to about 30 seconds. So they were very, very cognizant of the fact that the quicker we do it the right way, the faster we get out there. And then we didn't wait on the pumpkins. If some children were still in there putting on their coats, the rest of the kids went out and started their break. Our kids at Trinity Valley, they refer to their recess time, and they came up with this on their very own. They call it brain breaks. So if I go back to recess and then call it brain breaks, that's just what our children choose to call it, because they say it's a break for their brain, which really ties in well with what we're doing. But like I said, we think about the areas that were redundant, the things that we didn't need to keep covering. We looked solidly at the research. We looked at how the research of going outside unstructured play affects the brain. We did some things, Debbie did some things with our teachers that showed us that when she was working with us, after 45 minutes, she said, let's go take a break. Well, the teachers were, okay, let me finish I'm going to go check my emails or return texts. And Debbie said, no, we have to go outside. And at first we were like, we really don't have time to go outside. But after 45 minutes, we went outside, and it was funny how our conversations changed. We relaxed, we took a deep breath, and getting across to our teachers, it's not just taking a break inside, it's going outside in the fresh air, blue sky, and that's what the research, Posy might talk on that in a minute, the research of actually going outside. And what our teachers found is when they came in themselves after the 15 minutes, they were far, far, far more ready to take on the next thing. We think about it as, your brain holds so much in it, 45 minutes you sit and take it in, then you go outside, and it gives your brain time to saturate that information, and then you go back in. Another big thing that we noticed is kids weren't asking us as often, can I go to the restroom? I need to go to the nurse. Because I think what happened was, instead of them actually needing to go to the restroom, they couldn't stand to sit still any longer. So they were just saying to us, even though they might not have realized it, if I go to the restroom, I'm getting up and I'm moving. If I go to the nurse, at least I'm getting out of the classroom for a minute and having a chance to take a deep breath. So the times for the restroom have greatly diminished. The times nurses' visits have greatly diminished. So that gives us back time in our day to also implement more curriculum, where before we were having to wait, or kids were outside of the classroom. And I don't want to go over my time, so Debbie, if you want to go on to the next one, I forgot to write down what time I started.
You're good. You're ready.
Okay, so some of the pitfalls, we have to be patient with ourselves. You can't just say that you're going to do this amazing new process without taking the time to really figure out how's it going to work, how will it work in your curriculum, time to talk to your parents about it, time to talk to your teachers about it, having that open dialogue. Sometimes our teachers get frustrated. This didn't work today. I don't know how we're going to do this. But we had a great relationship with Debbie, where she would walk our teachers through it and help us to figure out how to do things better, change it up. Now, as an administrator, another thing that I have to look at is we have gone from 1 recess to 4 recesses, and we are expanding it next year to 3rd and 4th grade, which means there's going to be a lot more kids outside more often. So we had to get pretty creative about where we would play. Before, the only place we went to was the playground. And, then you think, how are we going to get all those kids on the playground all day long? But when we started looking around our campus, there were a lot more places to play than the playground. And it was amazing how creative their play got when they weren't given a basketball hoop or a 4-square or a hopscotch. Their play became truly creative, looking at different places around the campus where we could go and have our recesses. Our kids become much more resilient. When we first started, we wouldn't have our kids go outside if it was under 40 degrees. And we thought, really? I guarantee you it's 28 degrees outside right now in Mansfield, Texas, and there's probably not a child that's not outside right now playing in the snow. So what we realized is it was our perception of how much kids could tolerate and not so much what the kids do, because usually when we go outside, when it's less than 40 degrees now, they usually start shedding their coats because they're playing so hard out there once they get outside. We've worked very closely with our PE department. Our PE looks more at structured activities. We look at unstructured creative play. And then we try and keep those separate. And Deb, if you want to go to the next slide.
Yep, and if you can do about maybe a minute.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for keeping me on track.
Yeah,
The other great thing that I think is the icing on the cake for this whole program, and this might be my what's important to me looking at our kiddos, is the character development piece, the positive action. This is a K through 4 initiative. We talk the same language. We begin in kindergarten. We carry it through to 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade and on. So when we talk about things like empathy and respect and understanding and positive behaviors, it's the same language. And I'll just say this real quickly. When I was at a home not long ago doing a home visit, the mom said to me, Miss McNutt, I need to tell you that when I got in my child's folder today, I took out a piece of paper and it said, we're working on these things at school today. This one is on empathy. And she said, I said to my daughter, tell me what empathy is. And she said, Mom, it means I understand and I can feel how you're feeling. And she said, and she shows me that now, and we talk about that. And she said, I've been very impressed with how positive action is not just happening in the school or in the playground, but we see it at home as well. So we might be able to talk about that more later, but I'm going to hush and I'm going to turn it over to Debbie.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank
All
you.
right. Next, we have Dr. Jim Chadwell. Take it away.
All right. Well, thank you again for this opportunity to present this morning. Obviously, we're very early in the process of this, but I want to give you a little bit of background information on how we came here. We've been doing some work in the last 2 years, just reading the various literature that's out there and reading finished lessons from Dr. Sahlberg. And as we reviewed all that, I saw that TCU and Dr. Ray was looking at that data. We had the opportunity of participating in a professional development opportunity at TCU. And as anybody that knows Dr. Ray, you get engaged very quickly, especially if you align on an issue. And we continued to talk and work through it, and it took some time because what we're basically taking is something that is theoretical in our country, not necessarily obviously in Finland, but in our country, and putting into practical application, and particularly in the challenge of having a state curriculum and accountability assessment standards and that type of thing. So there was a lot of discussion, and so one thing I'll comment on is that we've been very careful of how we move forward. We've not gone too fast, we've not gone too slow, and we've made sure that everybody is with us along the way, and I think that's the key. So let's go to the next slide. So the first question, how are school administrators making these changes in the schedules? Just the first bullet there. We were very deliberate, very creative about how instructional time is organized. One thing that we had to do is have a mindset change, that physical activity is not extra, it's not an add-on, and although it may be unstructured, that doesn't make it less purposeful. We're sitting here in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm right by Eagle Mountain Lake, and I'm looking out the window, and it's completely to go to a friend's house, and I can see their trails going up the hill, and all of that's unstructured. I bet they will have a day that will be full of purpose, and that's something that we unfortunately have squelched out of our school day, out of other things that seem to compete with our time, and we're very aware of that. However, what we had to do is get a mindset change to say, how can we make this an essential part of our day? And also looking at we have finite time. And so how do we look at our actual school day and look at an efficient schedule? People will always say that they do not have enough time, and and often will say, well, we're doing all that we can. I do not believe necessarily you can't create more time, but I've seen too many situations in which if you go back and look at something fresh, that you can find time within the system. And I'll get into how we created time here in just a little bit. So it's our goal to include these 4 15-minute recess times without compromising instruction time, which is a huge goal. So obviously we have very high expectations of what we want to accomplish academically, and we can't slow down. The big concern that we had with teachers early on, which is understandable, same concern I would have and have, is that we have a lot of things that we need to do, and we need to make sure that we accomplish those so kids are ready at those times of transition into kindergarten, into first grade, into second grade. And so that cannot be something that we're going to compromise. But we believe, and truly believe, looking at the research, working with Dr. Ray, that there is no compromise. This is a win-win, and it's simply how we organize ourselves that will make that possible. And here is one of the keys, is that we all know that kids are very distractible, and the more you keep them in one place for a long period of time, particularly if they're doing any type of work that does not include physical movement, at some point they're going to get off task. Even if the activity is engaging and interesting, with young kids simply cannot sit that long. And so what we've done in classrooms is often giving opportunities for kids to get around in the classroom and incorporate physical movement. I do believe the limitation of that is that's not the same as getting outside. Dr. Matt mentioned that we have, when you go outside and you have that different interaction, fresh air, blue sky, it is different than simply moving around in a room and saying, okay, your 30 seconds is up, now sit down again for 15 minutes or whatever it would be. And so this is something that we believe that our time, just like in CDS, will be gained by the fact that we'll have less off-task behavior and fewer transitions from activity to activity. The next area is what's the impact on the curriculum content. The impact there is we have a very tight curriculum, like anybody that's working in a public school has the same with the text, and there's a lot of content. We also know that our state's curriculum has more content than possibly can be covered in any linear fashion. So there's about 20 some odd years of content that was just done in a linear fashion. Therefore, things have to be compacted. There has to be a tremendous amount of coordination between content areas to ensure that we cover everything. Now, the problem is that there's so much that there's a superficiality that sometimes occurs in this case. And so what we have to do is how do we do more with less? How do we handle this with less? And what we believe is the restructuring of the day will include this additional recess reflection time. And this is something we don't talk a lot about. Kids need time to process information just like we all do. We all know, and you heard my biopsychology background, this is not so simple because there's a lot of research out there on this. But we know the mind needs time for reflection, whether that's in the dream state or whether that's times 2 or 3 days. Or in the old adage of let me sleep on it, it's probably one of the wisest things anyone can do before they move on. Yet with learning, we often say, okay, we did that, we've covered that, we've taught that. No, you've learned it, we've taught it, and now let's move on to the same thing. And we moved and moved and moved with this idea that we have to hit during these certain summative measures, whether they be final exams or STAR assessments, benchmarks, CDAs, etc. And so the problem there is it doesn't always provide reflection time. We believe that the recess time is going to provide integrated reflection time for kids to think about what they just learned and to process it so they'll be ready when they come back in. Also a key there is character education. We have not had a requirement for character education in our schools. We have many schools that do, or they have elements of best practices of character education. need to know, but then you start teaching me other things. I just need to know this. And knowing that that's a weakness of mine, I wasn't offended by it, and I know exactly what he's meaning. Take that to be an example here. What quite often happens is we say, okay, we have 45 minutes, let's pack 50 minutes in. Let's just get a little bit more add-on. But the reality is kids can't go as fast as we do because we already know the material that's wrong with teachers and educators. They simply need more processing time. And so making sure that they are mentally and physically ready to learn, and we believe the amount and depth of their learning to be accelerated. And also we have to ask ourselves if we're teaching, what we're teaching enhances student learning and performance. How do we know this? What are we going to do if it's not working? If it's not, we need to be willing to make changes that make a more meaningful impact on kids. And that's something we should do regardless of this project or any other project. And so I'm really excited about the self-reflection that's going to be occurring for us to look at how kids are engaging. Also, just to note that our scope and sequence will not be altered, but the daily lesson plan obviously will change significantly. It will be organized differently, and the instruction will be segmented differently. But the recesses should coincide with natural transitions in class instruction, rather than taking what has been done before and saying, okay, at 10:32, we're taking a brain break or a recess. It needs to obviously have a transition time. So there's going to be a lot of changes to our curriculum scope, not our scope and sequence, but our daily lesson. The pitfalls. Public schools, we know, are highly traditional entities. People have very, very specific expectations on what they look like. And we know what those are. At every grade level, there's expectations. And since there's common expectations, quite often initiatives that look very different than those expectations will be thrown out because people say, well, why do we have time to do X, Y, or Z? Because we need to be teaching kids. We don't have time to do carrot bread or additional recess or whatever it may be. So communication early and often is going to be a key. This is something that started with our teachers being involved with that, knowing what we are doing, what we're proposing. Our teachers selected this. Our campus administration selected this. This was not done to them. This was provided, and they could have said no, and we would have moved on to another campus and looked at for another partner to put this in. It's very important to me in putting this in that we had that. But starting with communication. Second is how organization. Chaos breeds stress. We know that. And although there'll be some time for we'll call it controlled chaos within certain parts of the initiative, we wanted to make sure that we were very, very clear that that things are purposeful and people know that, so it's predictable. Training of professional staff, of course, Dr. Ray is just wonderful with that. That's a non-negotiable. We must be committed. We must be trained. She did a board report with our school board. Just a note, we have 25 schools, 18,700 students, so a huge system. She was at our board meeting on Monday to make sure that they understand as well what we're going to be doing. So everyone being trained at the level that they need to be. Collaborative environment. Teachers are at the center of the implementation. I've already mentioned that. I cannot overstress that. There are many initiatives we all know as educators that go out there, and because they don't engage those that actually have to implement it, it gets rejected or misunderstood or poorly implemented. So that's the key. Research, and I'm very excited about this because quite often we get very busy in public schools implementing. We never measure the result. And obviously, Dr. Ray's work will be very clear that we look at the measurable, qualitative, and quantitative results of this. And finally, commitment by all stakeholders.
All right. Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Chadwell. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that
Yep, you got one more. Nope, you got one more.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, real quick. Am I okay on time?
Yeah, you're fine.
1 minute?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Why Eagle Mount Saginaw and why now? This is years in the making. We have been thoughtful in our assessment of it. We've been very clear about how we've done it. And I think that's something that I stressed at the very beginning, but I'll end with this. This is something that I see that we were all on the same page of what this will do in the lives of children. Also, our district and campus leadership believe that the incorporation of unstructured play is needed. There is not one individual in the system that I've talked to that said, oh, I don't think that's needed. The only concerns is how do we do it with all of the other challenges we have. And of course, that's the challenge Dr. Ray, campus leadership, our teachers have in making that happen. But I think that's been clear. When she presented to the board on Monday, there was no member that concern. It was like, this is just intuitive. It makes sense to them. Also, we know we have to balance the responsibility to balance the increase in curriculum standards and the state assessment requirements by ensuring that children have all of the advantages to be successful. I truly believe, and I'm obviously hopeful, but I actually believe just from looking at the research see this implemented over 1 or 2 years. This is something that we're going to put at all of our schools because of the tangible effect it will have. And finally, Eagle Mountain Elementary chose to be involved. I mentioned that. This is a critical element to the nature of the project. They have to have that ownership and buy-in and buy-in into it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chadwell. I really appreciate your insight. Next, we're going to have Ramey Ramsey from Irving ISD. So go ahead, take it away.
All right, hello everybody. I'm really glad to be here. I'm probably lucky that I'm coming behind Sandy and Jim because I'm able to reinforce a lot of the things they've already said, and they've spoken a lot of things for me. But I kind of want to talk a little bit how we got to the point with the LEAP project. Otis Brown Elementary, what probably makes us a little unique from a couple of the other districts that spoke before us, is that our campus, we do have about 800 kids. We are about 90% free and reduced lunch. We got to this point through just a series of conversations over a couple of years, and then somehow it led us to Dr. Ray, which has been a great finding for us. We have really looked a lot at trying to find ways to get our kids more engaged and more active. We have done things like, for example, we were a pilot group in a swim program that we had. But we've talked a lot about our kinder and first grade, about how our kids really need. We really need to focus on the whole child. And what else can we do? A lot of our kids come from apartments, come from environments with working parents where they don't play outside. They're not allowed to play outside. So a lot of times, not only do they come to school with not that time and ability outside of school to play, but they also don't have skills to play with each other, to communicate with each other. And so we were really, really fortunate to get referred from one of our district coordinators to Dr. Ray. I had her come out and actually talk to my kindergarten and first grade teens. And they were like, this is what we've been looking for. This is exactly what we've needed along the way. So they were extremely excited. So we started the process and the conversation. We are a district with 20 elementary schools. We have over 30,000 kids in Irving ISD. We were the first elementary to sign on as a pilot, but we do have 3 elementaries that are signed up for next year to begin the pilot. So we're really excited about that. With my background, probably a little with my secondary background, the first thing I went to is schedule. How's this schedule going to work? And so, Debbie, if you want to go ahead and flip on to the next slide, I wanted to just share to you the draft of the schedule that we had created with our team, just to kind of give those of you that are visual to really look at how that schedule is going to look. Our district is very, we have board policy that dictates the number of minutes that we have per content and how the content in the instructional day is broken up. So we tried to really look at how our day is arranged and what provides some natural transitions in there. And we developed a schedule where, basically follows the guidelines of it. For about every hour of instruction we do have a 15-minute recess built in. Obviously, this is a work in progress. Like everyone else said, as we see things that need to be targeted along the way, we can switch that. But we created a schedule that allowed 2 recesses before lunch and 2 recesses after lunch. And it also provides really natural transitions between parts of our lesson. Even some of our contents that run over the normal 45-minute hour segment, within those blocks, it's very easy to find transition points. And what we have found, one of our biggest struggles, especially with our little learners, is that there is so much content and so much to fill in through the course of the day that you would be in a classroom where teachers felt like, okay, everybody put this up, get this out. We're moving from math to science, and there was no natural stopping time. So by looking at the schedule and the way that it's divided out, you can actually see that, like, for example, science is completely isolated between 2 recesses. So we're able not only for the kids to have that break, and then our teachers are really able to clearly frame those lessons and to make good entries and exits to what is our learning for the day, and then to process that when we're done. And then I also want to point, we do really focus on, this is about our kids, but it also the benefit of our kids from our teachers being able to have that time to take that break and have that reflection. So we're really excited about that opportunity and how that went. So Debbie, you want to go ahead and flip to the next slide?
Sure.
As far as impact of curriculum, I know that the other presenters have talked about that too. But one of the things that was most powerful for us is that one of our first main training sessions with Dr. Ray, which she does an amazing job with your staff training them, we did an activity where teachers actually We tell them, be brutally honest, be very honest, and sit there with your peers and really outline how much time of the day you truly right now spend in transition and in breaks and in redirections. In some of the groups were like, I kind of feel bad telling you this at the end of the day, but some of the times they were very eye-opening. There were up to an hour of transitional time built in, either within their day cards or just through the redirection and the transition time between content. And so this schedule actually allows for those embedded transitions, and we're actually able to utilize that time for our unstructured breaks and for our recess time in a much more purposeful way than it just being lost instructional time. Also, we think it really is important that it really gives opportunities for the students and teachers to process their learning before moving to the new content. All of us that teach in the state of Texas and that work in the state of Texas really understand the amount of standards and the expectations that are being pushed farther and farther down in the grade level chain. And so it is a lot of information for kids to process. And so by allowing these opportunities and keeping these transition, it also allows, the schedule allows for us to really focus on what the needs are. Are we really prioritizing what really needs to be taught? I think Sandy talked about it earlier in her presentation, where, what is it that we're really spending a lot of time on that maybe it's not developmentally appropriate? Maybe it's not truly aligned to the standards that are in that grade level at the time. Are we using, so we've had a lot of conversation with our teams and with our teachers about how do we make sure that we really embrace those instructional minutes between recesses and make them really powerful and aligned to what really we need to be focusing on. And then obviously after the recess and the breaks, the positive benefit of that are the kids being more prepared to learn. Tim, we're going to go ahead and flip to the next. Challenges and pitfalls. The challenges that we look, obviously we are very early in the process. Teacher buy-in, personally at our campus, we have not had a lot of issue at all with teacher buy-in. It is conversation. We have been having those conversations on our campus. I think you'll find very few teachers out there that don't feel like our kids need a more whole child experience and more opportunities to really take time to be a kid and to learn those creativity and those problem solving and those character skills. They're going to make them better lifelong learners. The challenges with teacher buy-in is how am I going to get everything else in that I need to get done? And so we've really, that's been a lot of our focus on conversation. How can I help you create your schedule? How can I help you plan your curriculum to make sure that you're still getting the bang for your buck and in everything that you need? District support. As a principal, obviously it's imperative that we have our district support. I think the district has been open to our conversation. They are willing to give us the opportunity to have some flexibility and make some changes. It looks like based on our curriculum guidelines in our district, we're going to lose about 5 minutes per content of instructional time, but it's been very easy to talk about how that time is just replacing lost transitional time and really looking at how we can impact our instruction. But we have a great coordinator at the district level that's supporting us, and the district has been willing to be open for this. So we are signed on to pilot through this and are very fortunate for Dr. Ray to have the data and the monitoring of that to help us prove what we know is going to be successful on our campus. As far as training definitely is a non-negotiable. Dr. Ray is really good about planning the training with you, schedule out, and really enforce for your teachers and reassure them once they see the data, even my ones that were a little bit leery, once that first presentation came through, that one of them came to me and the comment was, this just makes sense. You can't argue with this, it makes sense. So the training is really, really important. Some of the challenges we foresee on our campus and our district is staffing changing. As an administrator, I need to make sure that as we change staffing in those grade levels, as people move, retire, those kind of things, that we are making sure that we take the time to really educate the new staff members on why we've done this, what our goals are for this, and kind of where we're going. And so that's definitely something that we need to foresee, before the school year starts. Fidelity of implementation, as with anything that you implement new, one of our challenges is to make sure that it's really implemented with fidelity. One of the earlier presenters, Jim, talked about how it's really important that recess is a non-negotiable. Changing mindsets of teachers that recess is not something that I lose if I'm off task in class. Recess is actually an essential part of our day that is going to improve those behaviors in class and reduce the amount of off-task behavior in class. So really making sure that we're monitoring, we're implementing, having lots of conversation about really implementing with fidelity the program. And then just basically the commitment to the program, committing to it and saying, that we're in this, we're going to do it well. But one of our biggest challenges is mobility. We have about a 20% mobility on our campus of students. And so making sure that we take the time to, just like we would with a new student, but be intentional about really educating parents, talking to parents about why we do this, answering the questions about why our model or our schedule may look different than other than other campuses. But those are things that we just kind of foresee. But we are really, really excited about the opportunity to implement. I feel like my teachers are in a really good mindset. The parents that we've already shared it with are really excited. The only questions that we're getting is why is it only kinder and first, which I think Dr. Ray can respond to that later. But people want it more. I have teachers that have their own children on our campus that are like, man, I wish my child was still in kinder or first. So I don't think that anyone can argument that our kids need to be kids. Our kids need to be more creative. So we are really excited about being part of the LINK project and excited to partner with Dr. Ray. I think it's definitely a great opportunity for our kids.
Thank you so much, Ramey. Yeah, I really appreciate it. What you had to say, it gives great vision into trying to start a program and where we have to go to get started and then how we move forward with that. So thank you so much. Okay, Dr. Pasi Sahlberg, who is from Finland but now at Harvard, kind of a change for him. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Pasi.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. Good morning, everybody. I guess that all the snow in the world is now here in North America because there's no snow in Finland, and all people are actually quite upset because they cannot ski and all these things. The kids had the winter break just last week and this week, and they cannot do any of these winter sports now because all the snow is here in America. Anyway, I'm very happy to join you, and I want to start by really mentioning Debbie's work. I think you are doing excellent and very important work here in the United States and in your area. All these questions that we have been discussing are absolutely critical, and they're actually at the heart of the way Finnish educators and parents think about their children's education. So I'm very happy to hear this. Let me speak briefly and leave some time for conversation and questions. I speak about three things. First, I'll say a couple of things about the education in Finland so that people can put what I'm going to say next after that into the context. Then I want to emphasize the strong and systematic focus that Finnish education thinking and system puts on well-being and health of children, as much as it does focus academic performance and learning. And thirdly, I close by making some comments about the value of play, why we in Finland think that is important and why people should think like this in other parts of the world as well. First of all, we have the Finnish education system has a K-9 compulsory school system, so it means that at the age of 16 our young people are free from compulsory education and they can do whatever they want to do. Most children, vast majority of them, continue in a high school level where they have option for academic high school or vocational school for about 3 years and then higher education. All the education that I mentioned here is publicly funded, so we don't have any private education sector or private schools or charter schools. They're all public schools within the same system. It's very locally controlled and managed. I often say that the Finnish education system is one of the most locally covered system that I know anywhere. So most of the decisions regarding what the schools are doing take place at the district level or at the school level. So the central or federal control is very weak in my country. We built our system, the education system, thinking on teacher and leader professionalism. We rely on the local leadership, of course, because of the nature of how the schools are governed, and particularly the school leaders are at the critical point and critical people in terms of how the system is operating. We have a fair amount of trust within our society in general, and in trust in our teachers and schools in particular. That's why we are not having at all external inspection or standardized testing, except the high school leaving examination at the very end of the high school. But other than that, we are not doing any testing or rankings or competition, anything like this that you can see in many other countries. We have our school system has a very balanced curriculum that is designed by each and every school. So the standards for and goals for teaching and learning are set by each school separately and individually based on the work of the teachers and school leaders and parents and students as well. Physical education is part of every curriculum in every school, so it's a compulsory part of the weekly program of students, just like arts and music and some manual skills. Everybody has to learn how to cook, make food, and clean the kitchen and such kind of things as part of the mandatory curriculum. We don't have any competitive sports in our system, as Debbie well knows. That you can, if you go to any high school in Finland, you never see the symbols or the names of the sports teams. Competitive sports are done outside of the school. So the school is in Finland is a place for learning and sports, and also arts and music. Whoever does those things will be done outside of the school day. My second point here is that the Finnish school system's systematic focus on well-being and health is a very important part of the overall education system. Every school in Finland must have what we call a student welfare team. This is the group of teachers, school nurses, school principals, special education teachers, and some others who every week sit down and discuss the issues related to students and sometimes teachers as well if they need support in terms of how to ensure and improve the health and well-being of these children. It's a very important part of the overall operation of the school, and it's a kind of a preventive institution in the school that is trying to identify the problems before they get any worse. We also have a healthcare and dental care and counseling and special education and free healthy school meals, part of each and every school every day for every child, free of charge. So we are not kind of grouping our young people based on their parents or family background regarding which one of these services they are free of charge. So everybody is having these things for free. And finally, regarding this webinar here and the discussion here, we have a 15 minutes recess followed by every class for every kid, and not only for the pre-K and first grade, but throughout the school system, including the high school. And this is actually, it's interesting in Finland because this 15-minute recess is coming from the legislation, and it's something that the law stipulates that every child, every young person has right to have free time in a school by law. So it's not a question of whether schools want to do it; they have to do it. And it's the recess time is not only for students and children to do what they want to do, but it's also time for teachers to sit down in a teacher's lounge and breathe a little bit and reflect on the past class and get ready for the new one. Just like we heard before, that this is often very, very important part of the thing. So for children, this 15 minutes recess after 45 minutes, which is a normal length of the lesson, is a free time. It's something that always takes place outside, and you can imagine the cold conditions and snowy conditions in Finland normally, except now this year, that the kids have to go outside, they put their boots on and coats and go and play. It's very important in all of these schools that this recess time is unstructured, that the kids can do whatever they want to do. It's often focusing on sports, doing sports and moving and climbing and playing things and running around, which is it's a kind of a good thing for children to let them organize themselves. So somebody was mentioning earlier that the chaos creates stress, and this is definitely true. But also in many of the Finnish schools, we realize that chaos, particularly in the schoolyard during the recess, is releasing people from stress because they can self-organize, they can kind of create their own things, and order often comes out of this chaos that you see in the schoolyard. Then finally, the role of play, Debbie asked me to say some things about that. I think the role of play in people's lives in general in Finland is a different thing than in many other countries, because we value play since the very beginning of the childhood. The school in Finland begins only at the age of 7, so if the first 6 or 7 years our children can focus on play and do their own things. The kindergarten and preschool that we have universally available for all the children who want to have that is very much built on social development, building your identity, developing and improving your spatial skills or motoric skills, your artistic expression or creativity through play. So the first 7 years is really focusing on letting children play and learn and develop themselves through play. In Finland we are not concerned at all about the school readiness as it is in many other countries. Actually, school readiness in Finland means that every school must be ready for different types of children, and that's why the role of play is a central part in children's lives. We have a fairly low homework load compared to many American schools, for example, which will leave children with time to play more, particularly during the elementary schools. The Finnish school days are also a bit shorter than they are here in America, which means that the kids have time also in the afternoons for their own things, and it's often focusing on organizing play together with other kids. So why do Finnish people think that it's important? We first of all, we kind of think in Finland that every human being has a mind and kind of hidden abilities in their minds and within them that needs to be somehow discovered, and the school can do quite a bit in helping young people everybody to discover this inner self and the talent that everybody carries within. But we also think that the children's play is one of the best ways to realize that you have an imagination, that you can think and create ideas, and if anybody who realizes that he or she has an imagination, you can also then create ideas, be creative, and create innovations. And this is one thing that we, as a nation that is depending on not only on knowledge and skills that people have through education, but also we depend on people who can come up with the new ideas that have value, that can be somehow brought forward, and we think that the play is one of the best ways to cultivate and open people's minds and brains so that they are able to think. People are able to think in a new ways and different ways. So that's why one of the key philosophies of Finnish education is that young people should realize and understand the world around them through education and discover the world and the talent within them. So these two dimensions are a very, very important part of the Finnish education thinking, and that's why the play there is one of the best ways to do it. So let me stop here and thank you once again, Debbie, for giving me the opportunity to be here with you.
Dr. Stahlberg, thank you so much for being on this call. Before I turn it back over to Anita, I just want to say Dr. Stahlberg is not going to be able to be on all the way till 11, so if any of the questions that you have coming up, if any of them are directed at him, then it probably would be better to direct them to him first, and then we can direct to the other panelists as well. But I want to just say that I'm very thankful for all of you, and I appreciate all that you bring to the table, and thanks for being on today as speakers for this webinar. So Anita, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Debbie. We do actually have a couple of questions for Dr. Salzberg. One of the things he did talk a little bit about it being a law that children get the play, but how did the government decide that children needed to have 15-minute breaks?
It's an old tradition, and it's been there for a long time. I think that it's been a consensus or compromise between the teachers' work as well and students. But initially the law was saying that the length. This is how the law defined the length of teaching or lesson in Finland. It said that the one lesson is 60 minutes, of which 15 minutes must be reserved for children to have recess. And this has been there now for the last 40 years. I think it was when this current school system was created. Now there's a much more flexibility in terms of this, that one lesson doesn't need to be necessarily 45 minutes. Some schools have 60-minute lessons, some schools have 75-minute lessons if they want to, but they have to allocate the time for recess respectively. It's also time that the teachers in Finland are very concerned about, that they want to be sure that they will be not teaching the whole day through flat out without having any breaks. So I think it's interesting to listen to the conversation about how to guarantee the buy-in by parents and teachers for your initiative there in Texas, and this would never be an issue. I think our parents would be very upset and very noisy if a school would say that they will take more time for curriculum from the recess so that kids can learn. That would be something that would not go through in the Finnish system.
Thank you. I think another part of the question is it hard to continue offering a model like this as the competition to be best in the world kind of looms over us?
The best in the world refers to what?
As far as economics and the economy, social change, those kinds of things.
No, if we talk about this recess question particularly, this is a very widely accepted thing and supported also by the non-educators, those people who are working in the economy or labor markets or employers. And we have never had, I don't remember that we have never had really any question about the value of giving children and people and young people more time to do their own things. And I would say that this is part of the culture in Finland overall, that it's not really ever seen as something that would be atypical for a system, or that we should be doing some things differently in the name of competitiveness or competition globally.
Thank you. The next question I have probably is going more towards the other presenters. Based on how did you get parent and teacher buy-in, and Dr. Stahlberg, this would be a question for you as well. Although they said it, you said that it was a law in your country. How did you get parents and teachers to buy in? And then this would go to the other panelists.
This is Sandy McNutt. I'll go ahead and start it out. I would say that the first thing that we did was we made sure and put the research in front of our teachers and our parents. We had open conversations with them. We had meetings at school that we engaged our parents, had them come up while we talked about the process and the program. Whenever we had professional development opportunities, Dr. Ray talked with our teachers, presented the research, talk to the teachers about what are some of the things that keep you from teaching, what are the things that get in the way. And so we just had some opportunities that we specifically set up to have open dialogue with our families.
What about the other presenters?
Well, for Eagle Mountain Elementary, really this was kind of what Sandy said, it was a knowledge is power thing. We presented the information. We actually did a site visit, of course, to Trinity Valley and had teachers there with our administration, campus administration, and then also had another visit with an additional group of teachers. Really, it sold itself. I think several people have commented on how intuitive most of this is. It's not like it's incredibly complicated to think that kids need movement. Really, the challenge is how do you do that when you also have so many other demands on our time. In terms of parents, we're not quite there yet because we feel like we need to get the capacity of our teachers at a level, because ultimately parents are going to ask teachers. They're not going to care what's on the website or what's presented in the presentation. They're going to ask the teachers that they trust to know, what do you think about this? And we're at that point now. We'll start marketing, if you will, this near the end of this school year or near the end of this semester.
I think along those same lines, this is Debbie, with what Jim said with marketing, I think it is a recruitment tool that a lot of parents out there really do want their children to have movement throughout the day, but they also want their kids to learn. They want them to be productive. And so I think part of the reason for these two webinars and for the speakers that we have is that we all understand that parents need to buy in to what we do, because ultimately we want parents to understand that things could change at home as well. But as a result, what we're finding is that parents really are on board as long as they know that the health of their kids is going to be good and that the kids are going to continue to have a learning environment that is productive for them. So I think overall we're all seeing that as we move forward with these extra recesses in the schools.
Well, this is Rainey, Harvey, if I can piggyback for a second. I mean, we're very early in the process, but we have presented it to our strategic planning team, because we're in the process of strategic planning, and that includes community members and parents and teachers in district, and everyone has been very, very open. We've also presented it to one of our parent volunteer organizations. We have a really core group of parents that volunteer on a very regular basis, and everyone has been very excited. I mean, I think as an administrator, I'm constantly hearing from parents how much our kids have to do and how much the pressure is, and so they have been very, very open for this opportunity for our kids to really have this built-in unstructured time during the day to process and just be kids and to work on creativity. And as far as the teaching staff, I mean, we're really working on, building critical thinkers. We want kids to think for themselves. And to do that, we've really got to make sure we put them in situations where they have opportunities to really explore that and build those communication and problem-solving skills that aren't necessarily taught through direct teaching.
Thank you. That kind of segues into another question that came in about the data. Have you looked at the data within your districts to see if the increased physical activity has also led to some grade improvements or possibly improvements on your fitness testing?
Andy, you want to talk to that?
Yes, but Debbie, if you could maybe even more, if you want to give the concrete data.
Okay, all right. And then go ahead.
Okay, I'll just say, what TCU does for us, what the LINK program does for us, we did a lot, they'll come out and they'll spend a lot of time in our classrooms at the beginning of the school year, taking some really good data points, time off task, unfocused behavior. They'll be on the playground and document how our kids are playing, what they're playing, what they're engaged with. Are they playing independently? Are they playing in a group? What kinds of activities are they playing? So they gather a lot of information at the beginning of the year. And then we, at the end of the year, we go through and assess that as well to see if we see some changes. What will be good now that we've done it for a couple of years, because, a lot of times maybe those that aren't don't really understand the process, they might say, well, maybe you see growth because it's beginning of kindergarten till the end of kindergarten. And we get that, but this year, what we're able to do is we're able to look at last year's kindergarten as opposed to the end of the year kindergarten, then look at the students this year as well going into first grade. So we're seeing some things horizontally that are making a huge difference. But Debbie has some really good data, concrete data, numbers, percentages of the changes in our students from their off-task behavior, their unfocused behavior, how they're playing on the playground, that I think she can share with you guys. And I just want to say this in case I don't have a chance to revisit this. If anyone would like to come out and visit our school, we are more than welcome to have you guys come and spend some time in our classrooms and talking to our teachers and watching our students. We'd love to have you do that, and I just open that invitation to you.
Thanks.
That's interesting because we actually, oh, I'm sorry, Debbie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to give the data, but go ahead. If you go ahead and say what you're going to say.
No, you do the data first. You
Okay.
do the data first, and then I'll jump in.
All right. Okay. So the data showed we measured the observations at recess, and we measured what was going on in the classroom from an off-task behavior type position, and mainly looking at fidgeting behaviors, if they were talking to themselves or another person, just one other person while in the classroom, if they got up and moved around quite a bit just to get a different perspective, if they were what we called low tone, which was daydreaming or putting their head on their desk, kind of like the picture I had in the slide earlier, and then disruptive or aggressive behavior. We looked at all those things, and then we also looked at attentional focus, which now we're even moving more into attentional fatigue instead of attentional focus, which if y'all want to know more information about that, I can talk to that at another time. But so what we found is that the kids at Trinity Valley actually went from about 25 to 28% off-task behaviors to less than 8% in the spring. That was in a 4-month period. So we did the training in the fall, and then that spring, which was last year, we came back to observe again at the end of the semester. So we're not talking January, February, but we're talking the end of April, first part of May. And we were seeing significant difference or change from the off-task behaviors to very low off-task behaviors in the classes. Along the same line, some of the comments that I kept getting from teachers and the administrators, including Sandy, were things like, gosh, they seem calm. Gosh, they seem less anxious. They come in and they're very focused when they come back into the class. They don't come back in rambunctious or not wanting to settle down, which is one of the fears of schools. They really come back in ready to go to work. And so for the other schools that came out, they can probably jump on with this, but I think those are the comments they made to us as well. It's like, really? This is not like they've always been. This is a result of all the recesses you put in, and I'd have to say, and Sandy would too, yep, that's what's happened, because they were just like your kids prior to this intervention coming into play. So I think those things are huge, but then the other piece is the listening piece, and they went from about 67% of the time being able to listen and attend to what the skill was, which was only a 3-minute task, and went from that in the fall to in the spring being at 97%. And some would say, well, you didn't have control data. So let me just touch on that. This fall, we actually added control schools to Trinity Valley School and to the other school that we're working with from last year. And what we found is even this fall, with Trinity Valley only being in the program for a semester and about 3 or 4 weeks, they were significantly higher in appropriate behavior from the other school that was our control school that was doing 1 recess a day, either in the morning or in the afternoon. And so we're talking like significant, a 20% difference between the 2 schools in that control versus intervention. So lots of great data that's coming out right now. We don't know what the public schools will show. As they've all said, we're in our preliminary times, and we won't actually start the intervention until the fall, but we're collecting baseline data right now on control schools and intervention schools in Eagle Mountain and in Irving to just make sure that our schools are comparable. And then from there, we launch in the fall with the 4 recesses and the character development curriculum in these 4 intervention schools in Eagle Mountain and Irving.
Thank you, Debbie. We do have fair amount of questions still remaining, but the webinar is just about to end. But one of the things that I think we need to let everyone know that we're going to try to make sure that this information will go through all of the questions. We'll do some follow-up and make sure that we have answers for those that haven't been answered up to this point. I know there's a lot of interest in getting getting more information from those who've already implemented, as well as from you, Dr. Ray. One of the questions was how much for training by Dr. Ignite the Spark Ray. So that's kind of an interesting point. So we will definitely take all of the rest of the questions. But I think one of the things that came across as a comment that I think is really a good way to kind of summarize, and I'd like to read it to you all. It says, everything mentioned this morning is relative, compassionate, and responsible. We are educators who understand the natural physical needs and patterns of children. We must keep protecting our students by advocating for these positive changes in our schools. No child left behind, right? ? So I think that's almost a great conclusion to the webinar, and we do want to take time to thank all of the presenters for taking time out from their very busy schedules. Even though it is a snow day for some of them, we do know that their time is very valuable, and we want to thank them for participating this morning. We would like to let you all know that there will be a follow-up evaluation and survey coming in after the webinar, and we'd like for you to take the opportunity to fill that out. We hope this partnership with Tayford continues. We really want to continue to bring these webinars to you next year. And one of the questions in the survey is, what other content areas would you like to talk about? Do we want to go into something more in depth with what has already been presented? Are there other parts that you would like to hear about? So in closing, we definitely want to thank Dr. Ray, Dr. Chadwell, Ms. Ramsey, Dr. Stallborn, and Ms. McNutt for joining us this morning. And at this time, we will conclude the webinar.